The break of dawn is quickly approaching as I scamper along the trail in the bluffs by the bay. I'm headed to my home in the back grasses. The darkness is beginning to fade, but my log is still quite a romp away. My eyes are heavy and my body is begging to stop and flop, but I would like to be home, cozy in my log before the daytime drop. Then I hear the sound of a fiery whoosh echoing through the early morning breeze. Anytime I hear that sound, I know my dream is about to appear and I freeze. The floating orbs breathtakingly arrive every single time in flying fashion, and it never fails to reawaken my lofty passion. On the flip side, among those dreams of that mind-blowing climb, there are memories of a terrible incident involving a sky-high crime. Since I have a ways to go before I can rest my weary head, I would be happy to tell you my story on the way home to my comfy bed. Not long ago, I undertook my very first job. It began at the first hint of sunrise, and I will not fib, I was quite nervous. Raccoons are nocturnal creatures, so being a daytimer is quite risky, if not downright dangerous. I had the required stealth and an ironclad core, so that was not worrisome. It was those daylight hours I thought might be a problem, maybe even troublesome. Mama May suggested that I practice being more alert, try to have more focus, or I could end up like my Uncle Morris. He ran off to the Sunset Strip and joined the Starlight Clown Circus. Mama May then said, "Dear Harold, if indeed you do exit from your den at sunrise, you will gain important knowledge. Then you can reach for the stars, all the more wise." I knew the sunlit hours could make a raccoon daytime dozy, so I trained hard by sleeping through some nights, and in the end, daytime felt quite rosy. With no sleep, this job could be dangerous, perhaps, because it requires that I climb ropes and eat pie scraps. When I say it like that, climb ropes and eat pie, it sounds like an enjoyable chore. Well, let me tell you, it was a difficult task, and that is for sure. I will begin the story on the night Boss Toad found his dream and how he turned it into his forever delight. He found his passion because of some party trash and an accidental flight. During one of his escapades, Bob's world was hit with a shake-up in the dark while he was out rambling with a labor of moles at Harrison Park. Word was out that Stuart reunion had happened that day. They set the picnic pickings benchmark, so they say. The gang made their final climb to the party hut on the top of the hill as the aroma of leftovers led the way. Once at the top, oh, it looked so pretty with trash cans overflowing, topped with a party orb glistening as it did bouncefully sway. While tasting the tasty tower of sweet trash, the ribbon from the party orb wrapped around Bob's feet. Away Bob flew for the ride of his life, a ride he then knew he would have to repeat. Up he went, over the paddle boats, the peacocks, and a solo pup tent. This is amazing, Bob thought as he drifted over the pines while experiencing a whole new pine scent. The warm breeze carried Bob higher than he had ever been before. The view from above was the most wonderful he had ever seen. Stars twinkled above and the trees flickered below as the moon cloaked nature with a whimsical glow. The wind then picked up and carried Bob gracefully along as morning doves below cooed a beautiful song. Bob was mesmerized. He had not given any thought to the danger he was in until he tangled with the whirlwind and began to spin. That is when a gull swooped in and saved the night. She grabbed that ribbon and squawked, "Hold on tight!" As they flew for the sky, Bob laughed and cheered from deep down in, and when they landed, they both had the same big excited eyes and huge smiley grin. The gull then tipped the wing at Bob and said, "My name is Elder, and that was great fun. Would you like to go for another ride?" Bob croaked, "You bet, bring on that free-flowing midnight glide." Then he thought for a moment and suggested a little redesign. Upside down was quite fine, but upside right, that would be divine. By the time sunrise arrived, Bob and Elda had it all worked out. This would be the most uplifting ride from Old Sound to the Tub Lookout. It was during their test flights between the dew and the sunrise that Pie in the Sky was born. I am not sure how the pie idea came to be, but I am glad it did because pie is fine with me. So now with this great idea polished and the plan in its place, the time has come for the Toad and the Gull to set up their new space. The long swamp would soon be home to Pie in the Sky, an outlandish balloon flight with a tasty side of delight. Before flight can happen, though, the Pie contract must be signed and locked up tight. The high flyers decided that the best for the pie task was Eveline. She lives under the old crooked apple tree, and she bakes an apple and clover pie that is quite pristine. The smell of spiced apples with simmered clover is enough to make any grown animal cry. So they hoped it would help sweeten the deal for those amphibians and mammals that are too scared to fly. When Eveline was asked to join the Sky Pie team, the baking bunny eagerly replied, "I will," then hopped away to start gathering nature's harvest from the orchard on the hill. With the pies now confirmed and Elda working hard on the basket weaver's demands, Bob had one more feat. He had to convince a trio of bandits to fetch the helium power for the Pie in the Sky basket fleet. The Toad headed for the nest of the three ravens, Bruce, John, and Bill. They are the best of the best at the party supply still. These sleek sneakers have been gathering party supplies for years. No party orbs, however, as they feared they might pop in their ears. After a few croaks and some sweet chatter, away the ravens flew, wearing cat-tail-tip earmuffs. They headed off to gather orbs at a human celebration near the Georgian Bay Bluffs. So with the hummingbirds busy weaving, the ravens collecting orbs, and a bunny baking scrumptious pies, it is time for me to add my adventures from under those same adventurous skies. I will start by saying it was not hard to get up that first morning of training because I did not go to sleep. I was so worried I would not wake up that I did not get even a teeny tiny peep. Shortly before sunrise, I prepared for this exciting day by eating a pie and climbing a couple of trees. Then I scrambled away to wash up in the swamp before heading to my training with 4 very shaky knees. As I crossed the clearing, trying to forget about my jitters, I could see Boss Toad by the pond talking to a few other critters. When I reached the pond, the critters had scattered, leaving Bob alone. I approached and held out my paw and introduced myself as Harold, explaining that flying has always been a dream of my own. Bob then pulled out a diagram of a tree. He pointed out an orb that was tangled and struggling to get free. Trees are an important part of this magical tour, but if you get too close, well, that would be more like parkour. Launch from the launch pad. Be safe, said Bob. Then he proceeded to explain the details of my job. So it goes like this, he said. Before each flight, you must check that each safety ribbon is secured tight. Next, secure the customer in the basket ready to fly. Then motion for Jake and he will deliver the pie. You can then release the anchor and pass the ribbon off to the safety glider on the right. He will then fly alongside and tow the basket back at the end of the flight. Once back on the ground, promptly escort each customer safely away. Then return to the basket, snack on any pie scraps, and then do a replay. These treetop tours will not begin for a day or two, but Bob asked if I would stick around and join the crew. They needed some extra help getting ready for the opening celebration, so of course I did. My dreams of flying gives me total dedication. For the rest of that day and the day after that, we checked ribbons, inspected flying baskets, and tasted many a pie. Then on the eve of the grand opening, Bob made an announcement that I would be the new aircrew boss of Pie in the Sky. After a little kerfuffle and lots of congrats, Bob said a few final words. Be safe, be kind, and be courteous tomorrow, and watch out for any orb-busting birds. Now as the day fades to twilight, Bob and the crew have all gone, but I stayed behind to enjoy the jeweled sky's reflection on the beaver pond. I then settled upon a granite rock that had been warmed by the day's rays, stretched a few kinks and scratched a few itches and enjoyed a dreamy daze. With the spectacular view of the fairy tale pond and some whispery swishes of the fishes, the poetic atmosphere set my thoughts ablaze with all my sky-high wishes. Just before my 100th yawn, an extra burst of color appeared in that jewel pond. I lazily raised my spellbound gaze to the fading colors of the darkening beyond. There was a bundle of bouncing party orb barreling straight toward me. I shook the daze and was quickly on paw, ready to flee. Then this ginormous owl landed with a bundle of cheerful orbs, and he handed me a note. It read, "Happy retirement, Wilma." I was puzzled by this quote. "Turn it over," the owl smugly instructed with a beaky little grin. So I turned the note over and started again. "Sorry, Bob. We will no longer be retrieving anything that can pop. Streamers and glitter only. Sincerely, 3 rattled ravens. P.S. Maybe Norman can orb shop." That was an unfortunate surprise. Now the air orbs were going to need some safekeeping. But I was up for the job, no time for worry or weeping. "Are you Norman?" I asked. "Yep, how can I help?" The owl quickly volunteered. "Can you guard these orbs from a gang of orb-jabbing Skittles that have recently appeared?" Norman explained that he has had lots of practice scaring off all kinds of dangerous wingers. He said the floating orbs would be safe with him, and that he could certainly handle a swarm of tiny stingers. Who would have thought that in the end it would be a bunch of burly bunnies that would take to the sky with the entire power stash? Seems the guardian of the orbs was so busy wing-blasting mosquitoes that he didn't notice the groundhog in the silly fake mustache. Gordon, the biggest scallywag near Springmount Swamp and the grouchiest hog about, his task was to release the anchors and stand by as the bunnies' lookout. So while I, the new aircrew boss, was all snug in a log in the bog, a bunch of bandit bunnies hopped into the sky fleet and were freed to fly by a mean, mustache-wearing groundhog. The safety ribbons and glider, I'm sure you're ponding upon. Do not bother, there was none. Welcome to my awful awakening. Believe me, it was not fun. From inside my cozy log, I heard a frantic cry from Mama May. "Harold, my dear, why are all those sky baskets filled with bunnies and floating away?" I tell you, nothing has ever made me tumble from a log faster than that. Well, maybe once when I came home and found it occupied by a crazed barn rat. So out I tumbled and scampered like I never scampered before, or probably will again. But if I did not save those drifting bunnies, I surely would have been fired before my flying time could begin. As I rounded the bend toward the launch pad, I met Jake slithering in the same direction. He had also heard Mama May, and he was off to do his own inspection. Jake slid onto my back, and away we rushed with the bunnies floating overhead. No safety gliders, no idea what to do. Oh, the terrible dread. Then for a second time in this story, a winged creature saves the night. A butterfly that knows kung fu and is not afraid of a little fight. The butterfly was flitting about and seemed entertained by the owl being held captive in the tree. Until she noticed the groundhog as he was about to set the last bunny free. Marion spun him around like a feather in a whirling wind gust. She is a friend of Bob and Elda, and protecting friends is a must. When Jake and I arrived, we found this butterfly sitting atop a vine-bound hog. She must be the toughest little winger in the Springmount bog. Jake and I leapt into the basket as Marion quickly attached the safety ribbon well and tight. As we ready for takeoff, I wonder to myself, who will tow this basket back tonight? For obvious reasons, neither a raccoon or a snake would be sensible, of course, and a tiny butterfly's wings would just not have the force. Then there was a howdy hoot. I had never been happier to hear a hoot before. Norman was now free of the pesky mosquitoes and was the perfect safety glider for the chore. He would be large enough to pull all 4 baskets in. So the anchor was released and my adventure was about to begin. Into my ears came Mama's faint, distant cries. "Harold, where are you, my dear? Did you fall asleep on the bluffs again, waiting for the sunrise?" Why is Mama May talking about a sunrise in the middle of the night, and speaking of me sleeping right before my first big flight? Was that a whoosh? Why am I holding my favorite red orb? And I ponder Mama May's words. Is it possible that Bob does not exist? And there was no trash or party stuff? No mustache-wearing groundhog who thought he was so tough? Was it all a dream while I slept through a sunrise beneath the Georgian Bay Bluffs? Pleasant dreams, sleepyheads. Your friendly, daydreaming raccoon, Harold.